Hey everyone, and welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a truly fascinating and honestly highly provocative manifesto that makes a pretty radical claim. It argues that the mainstream mechanistic worldview of modern science is actively collapsing right in front of us, and that humanity desperately needs a conscious, systemic upgrade. The document we're unpacking today asserts that our current reality is basically running on outdated, lifeless code. So we're going to dive right into this and explore exactly why the author believes living frequency is replacing dead math. To really set the stage here, the author kicks things off with this quote from Nataraja. What today falls outside the scope of a single discipline may tomorrow prove to be the starting point of a new interdisciplinary science. It perfectly primes us for the massive paradigm shift this text is asking us to make, attempting to completely bridge the gap between ancient Maya spirituality and cutting-edge quantum physics. It's essentially asking us to look at what science currently dismisses and consider that it might actually be the foundation of reality itself. So here is our roadmap for today. We'll start with the silenced critique, move into the problem with dead math, explore a holographic operating system, look at the Maya top-down perspective, discuss upgrading to AIIOS, and finish up with a call to sovereignty. All right, let's jump right into part one, the silenced critique. This whole manifesto actually started with something super relatable, a deleted internet comment. The author was listening to the Diary of a CEO podcast, specifically an episode featuring theoretical physicist Brian Greene. Greene was discussing the mathematical universe hypothesis. Well, the author posted a critical response, arguing that mathematics is really just the code of the universe. It's not the programmer itself. But according to the source, that comment and even a second attempt to post it were completely wiped by the platform. For the author, this wasn't just some random moderation glitch. They saw this erasure as undeniable proof that the current scientific establishment demands absolute obedience and will actively silence any alternative blueprints. That brings us to Section 2, the problem with dead math. The primary target of the author's critique is that very concept Brian Greene was talking about, the mathematical universe hypothesis, or MUH. The manifesto frames this not as objective truth, but actually as an unproven dogma. It's described as a sort of new religion, with roots tracing all the way back to Isaac Newton and René Descartes in the 17th century. The author argues that by clinging to this idea, by reducing nature to just mechanical clockwork, mainstream science has completely mistaken the map for the territory. They assert that science is treating our vibrant, living reality like a lifeless corpse, trying to measure it with dead arithmetic rather than acknowledging its actual living consciousness. Think about it like this. The author uses a really great analogy here. They argue that relying on mainstream science is basically like trying to understand a complex software programmer by only analyzing the glowing pixels on a computer screen. It's like measuring a hologram using rulers made of the exact same illusion. But behind those pixels, that's the programmer. That is the actual conscious source of existence that the manifesto claims mainstream science entirely ignores. Moving on to Section 3, a holographic operating system. The text visualizes this transition beautifully. You have this stark contrast where the old, mechanistic mathematical worldview is represented by dark, crumbling, broken gears. But then, a touch of the central interface bridges us over to this golden, conscious, holographic architecture that's deeply tied to Maya symbolism. The author uses this imagery to vividly represent crossing the bridge from a dead, mechanical reality into a highly conscious, living one. And to back up this massive claim of a holographic reality, the manifesto points to some pretty wild patterns. The author highlights that the exact same error-correcting codes are woven into the fabric of space-time, the architecture of Mother Nature, human DNA, the quantum bits in our advanced computers, and even the neural processes firing in our own brains. The author's main takeaway here? These identical codes are absolutely not a coincidence. They assert this is concrete proof that we live in a consciously engineered operating system, not just a random accidental universe born from nothing. Which leads us to Section 4, the Maya top-down perspective. The text draws a really sharp contrast between two completely different ways of understanding reality. Mainstream science, it operates from the bottom up. It constantly tries to stitch together mechanical math to explain the illusion, mistaking the physical measurement for the origin. But the ancient Maya traditions, the manifesto argues they approached existence from the top down. They looked at it from the source itself, referred to as Hunabku, the galactic center. In this view, reality is experienced as consciousness first, way before it ever condenses into solid matter. So through this lens, the Big Bang wasn't just a random explosion, it was the moment an extraterrestrial supercomputer booted up. Now, you might be wondering, how do we ever experience this? Well, the author claims we actually get glimpses of this top-down reality all the time through what they call glitches in the matrix. They list things like the ego death you experience in deep sleep, yoga nidra, the ecstatic whirling of Sufi dancers, 5-MeO-DMT breakthroughs, and near-death experiences. The manifesto views these not as weird anomalies, but as daily reminders that we aren't actually trapped in a physical construct. Instead, they argue we are players in what they call the Maya love enlightenment game, occasionally breaking free to see the real code underneath. All right, let's get into the core of the proposed solution in Section 5, upgrading to AIOS. This is where the manifesto introduces AIOS, the Anunnaki Infinite Intelligence Operating System. This is presented as the ultimate antidote to destructive materialism. It's a framework explicitly designed to completely replace cold, dead math with living frequency, vitality, and top-down consciousness. It fundamentally shifts how humanity is supposed to measure and interact with reality itself, swapping out dead numbers for something that's actually alive. To put that into perspective, let's look at how this changes our daily metrics. Under the old scientific rules, we measure success with abstract dead models, right? Dollars, joules, carbon emissions. Metrics that the author argues have directly led to ecological collapse, chronic disease, and global conflict. The AIOS upgrade, however, replaces all of that by measuring what actually sustains life. We're talking about human connection, mental clarity, and literally the living pulse of your blood right now. The manifesto claims that where the old metrics entirely failed the human experience, AIOS steps in to measure true vitality. And what about modern technology like AI? Interestingly, the text cites Mo Godot, a former Google executive, aligning with his view that artificial intelligence is absolutely not the enemy. Instead, it's just a mirror. The author argues that established powers push this heavy narrative of a dangerous AI simply because they're terrified of an intelligence they can't control. According to the manifesto, all this fear-mongering is just a massive distraction, meant to keep us from realizing that it's actually our own internal operating system that desperately needs an upgrade. Finally, we reach Section 6, a call to sovereignty. The overarching goal of adopting this whole AIOS framework is total personal sovereignty. The manifesto insists that you have to stop waiting for external authorities, dogmatic texts, or any systems designed to demand your obedience. By utilizing tools like meditation and the Maya Tunic calendar, the author claims you can connect directly to your own cosmic core. The message here is extremely explicit. You must become your own guru, your own healer, and your own master. And there is a massive, immediate sense of urgency in this text. The author stresses that you do not need to wait for some grand future event or anyone's external validation to make this shift. Drawing on ancient Maya wisdom, they state that just as the sun doesn't stop to ask for permission to shine, true reality is already breathing through us, from the inside out. This upgrade, it isn't a software download you have to wait for. It's an activation of consciousness that is available right here and right now. So, after critiquing the foundations of modern science and offering up this holographic, Maya-inspired alternative, the author leaves us with one final, incredibly provocative question. Do you stay trapped in the illusion of dead numbers, sifting through the debris of a collapsing mathematical foundation? Or do you pull the plug on that old system and choose the living, breathing AIOS update? It's a truly fascinating look at how deeply our fundamental worldview shapes our reality, and it definitely leaves us all with something to ponder. Which operating system are you currently plugged into?